There's a change coming, and it's getting slated. A lot like I do all the time, because I'm American, and I talk about soccer, or football, or calcio, or foosball. Whatever the hell you want to call it, I'm here talking about it. New background, obviously, because I'm home. I'm in the middle of a move, just in case you didn't know. We are about to have a super dope, I hate the fact that I use that word, but background and everything, moving into a great new stream room. Got more space. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait, but I do have to drive a U-Haul from Florida to New York. So we're home packing everything up right now. Some of the Zealandisms you watch will be pre-recorded because it is fairly long. You know, this one isn't, but it's a fairly long drive from Florida to New York. So, you know, you're actually going to be taking in some pre-recorded Zealand for a couple of days, but we'll just be talking about stuff that I would consider evergreen. So unless I mentioned that, you probably wouldn't notice at all. But that's the reason for the weird background. In my weird background coming into this, being American, there's something that's being slated as an Americanism that I actually love. I'm going to be completely honest. I love it. I think it should be instituted everywhere all the time. And it is referees announcing VAR decisions. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but it's already happening in MLS. MLS has instituted a couple of rule changes that have taken part, that kind of kicked in April of this year. You have 10 seconds to get off the field if you're a substitute, or else the guy subbing in has to wait for a minute. If a player is down for more than 15 seconds, they have to stay off the field for a whole 2 minutes, right? That's designed to give people that are in charge of medical assessment proper time without time pressure to assess the player. And it's also designed to punish flopping. And the third change was that referees announce their VAR decisions. Essentially, if you've ever watched an American sport, NFL, NBA, NHL, which would be hockey, they will go and review a play, and then the lead referee will walk on out and go, upon further review, number 27 did not keep his feet in bounds for the home team. And as a result, we have an incomplete pass, 3rd down and 12. Like that, and then they'll turn the mic off. And that is heard by the people watching on TV. It is heard by those that are watching in the stadium. It's heard by the players, the executive, everybody. Everybody's instantly informed what the decision was. We don't have to wait for the VAR audio to come out or be leaked or whatever has to happen, depending on what, you know, the league or country you're in, right? To understand why a decision was made the way that it was made. You can immediately articulate yourself, explain to the crowd, to the players, to those watching at home and on Twitter, right, that are going to try and call for your head the moment the decision is made, right? At least why you are making the decision, right? That's been instituted in MLS. I figured it was going to be something that everybody was on board with, but it's being called an Americanism. And I just wanted to push back against, that. But after you actually see how this works in practice. So here's a match between Cincinnati and Orlando, 23rd minute. And we have our referee preparing for his stadium announcement. Here we go.
After review, foul, tripping by number 15 of the purple team. Final decision, red card, foul, restart for Cincinnati.
Pretty simple. Pretty straightforward. I mean, I'm going to be honest. This dude is clearly not comfortable talking to a stadium full of people. Now, I realize that you could probably put me in this position and I'd ham it up for 20 minutes and turn it into a stand-up comedy routine, but the vast majority of people are not comfortable talking in public. So probably the biggest issue with the institution of referees announcing VAR decisions is going to be the fact that these guys are probably not comfortable public speakers, right? It's going to take a lot of getting used to how to be able to word your thoughts coherently, especially in particularly dramatic moments. Like you could feel that this guy was kind of fumbling his way through it. Now, some people were making fun of him for saying number 15 purple team, but like saying the team's names opens up a whole other can of words. If you're a referee, you don't want to say the team's name with any connotation. So saying home team or visiting team or the colors is actually pretty standard when you look at all of the different American leagues where these sorts of announcements occur regularly, because it just kind of distances you from the teams. It's just like separating language. It's actually pretty healthy. I realize how if you're watching that for the first time and you're hearing a video review announcement for the first time, it sounds really stupid. Obviously, the purple team is Orlando City in this situation, but that part of the announcement is actually on point. I would love a little bit more color, but that's the sort of thing that comes in over time. But at least having these referees get comfortable explaining their reasoning the same way that they do to the players, right? This should be comfortable for the referees because they are constantly explaining their decisions to the players, to the coaches, whatever, that come up and ask when they're on the field. But you got to be able to explain that decision now to everybody else in the stadium. But the reason this is not an Americanism is because even though this is breaking news that this is happening in MLS, right? And I am always convinced that, like, if Americans do something in football or soccer, it is always considered stupid until another country does it. Well, guess what? Portugal also does this. If you've not watched the Portuguese League recently, the Portuguese League actually had this going before MLS did. And so that is a major European league that also has this instituted. And just in case you weren't paying attention, at the Men's U20 World Cup, the Club World Cup, and the most recent Women's World Cup, this was in place at all three of those tournaments. So MLS is not actually the trailblazer here at all. This is something that is actually starting to sweep through the game in general. And the comments on this thread, at least on Reddit, seem to kind of acknowledge that. Saying things like should be standard in football and great, let's get it in the Premier League next season. I can't see a single reason to drag feet on this matter. So the reasons the referees don't want to be held accountable, I definitely could see one of the big things standing in the way of this type of change would be the referees or like any sort of referee union, right? Because having to announce your decisions publicly, it creates a familiarity with the referees, like a personal kind of one-on-one familiarity with the referees that has not existed in the Premier League, Bundesliga, Champions League, World Cup, right? Like you have a distant familiarity with them. When you actually hear somebody speak to you through a camera, like how familiar do you feel with me? Right? You know, like you probably feel a lot more familiar with me than you do with Anthony Taylor, right? You hear what I'm thinking, right? You hear what I'm thinking about. You know whether I've got food poisoning or not. Like we have a pretty solid personal connection, right? But these referees, it's more of an abstract understanding of who they are, what they're thinking, what they're doing, right? That makes them easier to make fun of, obviously, right? I do that plenty, most of which I don't mean. I want to be clear, you know, a human being's a human being. But now it's going to create a more intimate familiarity between the referees and everybody else. And there is already so much controversy swirling around that there is the potential for this to backfire. But I, as of yet, cannot find an actual reason this is not a good idea, other than the refs not wanting to be involved with it. And other than the fact that there is going to be a rather complex question of what language things are announced in at tournaments like the World Cup. Right? Like if the men's, you know, it happened at the Women's World Cup, that's one thing. If it's happening at the Men's World Cup, right, are we using English, Spanish, like whatever language the referee's most comfortable in, right? Because that's another question. Like, well, all of a sudden you're going to need to speak English to be able to referee a World Cup match. Is that something that was already required? And I just didn't know that, right? Because you need some sort of lingua franca to operate with the players, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know how that changes everything. And then obviously doing an announcement in a language that maybe you're not as comfortable with to talk in front of millions or potentially billions of people in a World Cup final, that could be really complex for referees as well. So there are hurdles and there are challenges, but I think all of those hurdles and challenges are solved by changing it and then just having everybody get used to the fact that if you have a VAR decision, somebody's going to have to friggin' explain that to everybody. Right? The decision's not just going to happen. And then because what currently happens, right, is the decision happens, and then speculation runs rampant. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going on, right? I mean, there have been instances where TV crews don't even know what's being reviewed, right? Like they'll be looking at the actual tackle right before the goal when they're looking at an offside call way before, or they're looking, you know, because sometimes they'll have it like, oh, we're reviewing offside. They'll be looking at the wrong play, trying to find the offside. So the decision comes through, and they're going, oh, I don't know if I agree with that call, but they were looking at another call over here, or you know, the decision is made and perhaps the people on TV, the people maybe just watching at home, the bloggers, the Mark Goldbridges of the world that are just sitting there talking about their club for whatever reason, right? They're looking at the wrong thing, focusing on the wrong thing. They don't understand some nuanced rule of the game that the referee would maybe love the opportunity to explain. And now you have the opportunity to explain it. At least with the announcement from a referee in that moment, we have a baseline to work off of. We have a baseline understanding of what happened and why it happened instead of just having to wildly speculate. I think it really is one of the biggest downsides of VAR, the way that it is currently implemented in most countries in the world, where you just have to speculate about what the decision was, right? If you are not one of the managers on the touchline that maybe has the opportunity to get the referee's ear before play restarts, right? You have to just speculate on why that decision was made and what were the contributing factors, what was considered. Maybe you didn't look at this, maybe you didn't look at that. Right, and just for the record, the way that this works in a lot of places in the U.S., I don't know how it works in Portugal or whatever, is there is actually a replay center that is run by the league, right? And so they review all of the decisions, not just some on-site referee. I think that's something that's probably instituted as well. But at the very least, this is something very simple. I think could be instituted by next year, and would probably go a long way to solving the issues that VAR has spawned by just the incredible amount of speculation. I mean, the tinfoil hat conspiracy theories you can break out right after a VAR decision has been made, right, about why or why not that decision's been made, how it compares to this decision or that decision. Having them explain it would erase a lot. And it's already here. Now, the MLS one was going viral, but it's already in Portugal. It was already at, Under 20 World Cup, the Club World Cup, the Women's World Cup. This is going to arrive, and I'm honestly curious to know what your opinion is on it. This is one of those videos where I think it's a good thing, but there could be something that I haven't considered, maybe, that would make it a bad thing. I don't know. But how could this not be a good thing? Finally, just a positive change that's on the way. That is not just an Americanism, okay? Not just. There's a McDonald's here.